And we're joined on the phone now by Lynchburg Vice Mayor Curt Diemer. Good morning.
Good morning, Mary, Brian, Biscuit. How you guys doing?
Doing well, thank you. We wanted to talk to you about flock cameras. These are making a lot of news. I watched the work session from a couple of weeks ago where Chief Edwards and the man with the flock camera with the company made the presentation, and I thought they made a pretty good case about why these things are valuable for a community. Already, Lynchburg has 80 of these automated license plate readers in place. But they made the argument about getting more flock cameras that they can help you find stolen cars or vehicles tied to a known suspect, or if there's an Amber Alert, they help find the vehicle that much faster. That they have their built-in privacy guardrails, that they don't have any facial recognition. You don't see who's inside the car, just the car and the license plate. That they're going to get rid of the information after 21 days, and they're not going to use them for things like speeding tickets, red light violations. So, Vice Mayor Diemer, I know you're concerned about these things, though. Tell us why.
Well, Mary, I think they are problematic. Most of the time, these type of things grow, and mission creep happens. So it starts out as one thing, and then gradually expands. That's what government does best, is expand. And I think the citizens deserve better assurances and more transparency that these cameras will not evolve into a system that tracks the movements of law-abiding citizens without proper oversight. Right now, they can be used to track you and me, Mary.
How so? I mean, and that's one of the things that Chief Edwards pointed out, and he cited recent court cases where this technology, the automatic license plate readers, is perfectly legal. So if you're on a public roadway, your license plate might be out there, whether it's police officers or a private neighborhood association or whatever group, to read.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. You cannot get in a car that doesn't have a license plate visible for law enforcement to see. However, this technology increases the power of government exponentially, and there's no real guardrails. The guardrails that they mention, 21 days, well, that doesn't cover if they've shared the information with somebody else. Federal agents, state agents, other states, other localities around us, they may not be limited to deleted after 21 days. So we need some clear information. We need answers. Public confidence comes from transparency, and we need regular reporting by some kind of independent oversight to get accountability on this. I've got a lot of questions. You probably heard some of them that I'd still like answered. Chief Edwards read off almost 30 minutes of cases where flock cameras were peripherally involved in some way, but he defined whether they were critical to solving the case or were they just used at some point in the case. How many cases involve small things? They say they're not used for traffic violations and these other things. But again, that's for now, and Chief Edwards won't always be there. And what will the next chief do? And what will the next city council government do if things change? Will they? Because the capabilities of the system are pretty vast and expandable. And what assurances do we have that it won't creep into an area that resembles a dystopian state like we've all read about in 1984 by George Orwell?
And
There's been a lot of things lately that have done that. The curfews, we don't hear the police calls on the radio anymore. That's now silenced. So there's a little things. If you add them all up, you start to wonder, is this really what Lynchburg wants? Is this what our citizens want to become?
So you talk and you have questions, and the chief. I like I said, I watched the work session, and I've read some of the stories about this, and I heard the question about, I don't want one of these cameras getting, aiming into my bedroom, and the answer was, anybody, if your bedroom is on the route of a public sidewalk or public road where anybody with a phone could just snap a picture, then that it could very well be. But these are not doing anything more than what any member of the public could do. It sounds like it sounds like you have questions and the police are answering them, but you don't like the answers. You're still worried about that it's a privacy invasion.
They were very, very, very incomplete answers. And I support the police, and I love the fact that they are making some of those arrests that they talked about. That's great police work. I think increasingly in Lynchburg, the police department is depending on cameras, and it's not necessarily laziness, but it's like you really don't have any case in Lynchburg unless you've got something on a camera. And I think citizens deserve full protection from their police, and it shouldn't require a camera. I've FOIA'd, which is crazy that a vice mayor has to FOIA information from the police department. I should be able to get it easily. Just the locations of the camera, which, again, like you said, they're out there. Everybody can see where these flock cameras are. But they somehow are denying that information to the elected representative of the people to just know where these cameras are. They say that's tactical information. Well, Virginia courts have ruled against that idea that somehow or another this is tactical. And that should be public information. Where are they? So where's the transparency from our police in Lynchburg? You said 80 cameras, and that blew me away because I've heard that we're paying for 15. Well, now they're requesting 100, which is exponential growth, unbelievable growth. When we've already expressed concerns, we had questions that were not answered. Why are all these other localities canceling, like Charlottesville, their flock contracts? Why are we in Lynchburg paying $60,000 a year?
Okay, and I'll interject there a little bit. 80, I said 80, and that's 15 of the flock cameras that are already in different places around the area. The police worked with VDOT to have to work on where the best places would be along the roadways, and then the other 65 are in the actual vehicle cars. And as I understand it, those are not flock cameras; those are just the automatic license plate readers, automated license plate readers. So they're in the police cars.
Okay.
Is that what you understood too? That's what that was in the presentation.
I did understand they had them in the cars, and I do understand they have them on drones, and I do understand they have the body cameras, and all of that digital video technology can be fed into the flock system. It's the capability of the system that's the issue, and they're just more sources of data. But once it gets into the flock system, it's easily shared with who knows who and how long they keep it. And we only keep it for 21 days, but how long do our partners in law enforcement elsewhere keep it? These are just basic questions that I still think we really haven't answered. And, how many of these cases resulted in convictions? I'd like to know that. How many were false arrests, like happened to the one lady here in Lynchburg who was arrested in front of her kids at gunpoint and had to walk backwards with her hands interlaced over her head. And now her and her children are in therapy because she said she was worried she was about to get shot. And it was a mistake of the system and the license plate. And the whole thing failed her horribly. And that should not happen in Lynchburg, Barry.
Speaking with Vice Mayor Curt Diemer here on the Morning Line.
You told ABC 13 that you're in favor of the cameras, but it sounds like you're telling us that you are not.
Nope, I've been absolutely clear, Mary. If you're paying any attention to what I've said at all, I am not opposed to the police having technology to read license plates. However, I am very concerned that there aren't proper guidelines and transparency and policies that clearly define what's going on. And that's where my questions come from, and I still haven't gotten answers. Can state agencies access? Can federal agencies access?
Well, let's talk about that. The State Crime Commission report says that 21% of law enforcement agencies reported keeping the data longer than the 21-day retention limit, some up to 6 months. 25% of agencies have shared data that they're not supposed to share. I think we have 50 separate shares with the federal government where if you get a warrant, you do it, but they have not been enforcing that requirement. Does that give you pause? I mean, and by the way, you're supposed to there are mandatory reporting for this. Over a third of localities decided they weren't going to do it. I mean, this sounds like a program that at least some places are abusing.
And I checked on that, Brian. Lynchburg did report. Here's the problem. There's no standardization of what's included in the report, and a lot of the calls that are logged by the flock system are logged very generically, person of interest. That'll be the category. And it really doesn't describe what the reason was that this was used on a citizen, probably an innocent citizen in most cases. So, those things need to be further defined. Anytime you have new technology like AI or the internet, I mean, it changes things, and we need to craft careful policies around it to ensure that civil liberties are protected as well as public safety. I mean, they're both important things, but they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, we should be able to do and protect both the public safety and the civil liberties of our citizens.
Yeah, and I should note here, Delegate Charnel Herring, who's head of the Crime Commission, says that given the poor response to the survey and what they did get, they're probably going to tighten the rules on these things in the next session of the General Assembly. But let's talk about, you mentioned transparency before. Would your worries about the flock cameras, the license plate readers, and we'll ask about the gunshot detection system too, be assuaged if there were a more strict or stronger reporting and oversight governance for this, where maybe local governments have a report every 30 days or every 60 days or something like that to really keep an eye on what's happening?
Exactly. Mission creep happens in organizations, and anytime you add this sort of very powerful surveillance technology and give it over to government, it starts out nice and simple, and everybody would agree with the initial reason to do it. But what happens over time is it often expands and further infringes on our freedoms, our liberty, our privacy, and we need very clear guidelines going forward. They won't even tell me where they're located. I mean, that's kind of extraordinary in my mind that the vice mayor of the city doesn't know where the cameras all are. I mean, we can see these things; they're very visible. It's not like they're hidden up in trees or hidden from us. We probably don't realize that almost every police car is also capable of it because it's not as visible there. But we just don't want to become like England, London, where it's basically a surveillance state and there's a camera at every corner, and expanding to 100 new ones when you've got obviously concerns already from the elected representatives and from citizens who've spoken in council and from citizens who've been falsely arrested in front of their children.
Well, Vice Mayor, let me ask you one more thing here. The city also uses Flock's gunshot detection system, or uses audio sensors to triangulate where shots have been fired in the city. These things have become very effective over the years as far as determining that and transmitting the information very quickly. Do you have the same worries with that, or do you think that's less problematic?
That doesn't identify anybody. It's not like a license plate, which identifies an individual. That's a sound that should be cause for concern. Is it able to determine whether it's a firecracker or fireworks or, backfire from a car? I think the technology is getting better, and I don't have the problems with that technology that I do with the type of technology that Flock uses, which is tied to an individual. So if I'm driving around town, they could literally know the path I took, where I stopped. I mean, eventually, if we get more and more of these cameras, they know every step I take as an individual. They know who's going to churches. They know who's going to meetings. They know unbelievable amount of private information that people should be concerned about. That kind of power in the hands of people who aren't even sworn officers. Chief Zudema took me on a tour of the new police station, showed me this massive room over there where they're going to put all these screens on the wall that monitor the drone footage, the car footage, the flock camera footage in this one room. And I said, who's going to be sitting in this room? Is it going to be sworn officers? He said, no, they'll mostly be non-sworn officers. And I got questions about that. You know, a sworn officer has a certain obligation to follow the law and do things correctly and follow procedures, whereas a non-sworn officer isn't held to the same high standard.
All right, Mr. Vice Mayor, we'll have to leave it there for this morning. Vice Mayor Curt Diemer, thank you for joining us this morning on the Morning Line.
Thanks, guys.